The silver-blue starship of the Narration Empire descended through Earth's atmosphere, its elegant curves catching the morning sunlight. Inside, Princess Taya stood before a viewport, studying the approaching landscape with critical eyes. Her tall, slender form was wrapped in ceremonial attire, flowing fabric that shifted between deep purple and midnight blue with her movements. The iridescent markings along her temples pulsed faintly, betraying her anxiety despite her composed expression. "Your Highness, we'll be landing at the human military base in 5 minutes," said Royal Guard Captain Doyen, bowing deeply. "Very well." Taya's voice carried the musical quality characteristic of her species. "Remind me why my father insisted I personally attend this diplomatic meeting? These humans have barely mastered spaceflight." Captain Doyen maintained his respectful stance. "The Emperor believes forming an alliance with Earth strengthens our position against the Vordax. Humans may be technologically inferior, but their strategic location in this sector makes them valuable." Taya sighed. The aggressive Vordax species had been expanding their territory for decades. Even the mighty Narration Empire recognized the need for allies. Still, being sent as her father's representative to this backwater planet felt like punishment. The ship touched down with barely a tremor. Taya straightened her posture and lifted her chin. She would represent her people with dignity, regardless of her personal feelings about humans. When the ship's doors opened, Taya was met with bright sunlight and a crisp breeze, not unpleasant, but different from the carefully maintained atmosphere of Narration worlds. A small delegation of humans stood waiting on the landing pad, dressed in formal military attire. Taya descended the ramp with measured steps, her 6 royal guards falling into formation around her. The humans were smaller than she expected, with their varied skin tones and hair colors so different from her people's uniform blue-tinted appearance. A human woman stepped forward and performed a slight bow. She wore a dark uniform with various insignia that Taya couldn't decipher. Her black hair was pulled back tightly, and her posture was impeccably straight. "Welcome to Earth, Your Highness. I'm Lieutenant Hannah Kim. I've been assigned as your security detail during your stay." Taya blinked slowly, her translator converting the human speech. She looked Lieutenant Kim up and down, noting her small stature and lack of obvious weapons. "This is what Earth offers for royal protection. A single soldier?" Several of the human officials shifted uncomfortably, but Lieutenant Kim's expression remained professional. "I assure you, Your Highness, I am fully qualified. My team will support us from a distance, but I will be your primary contact and protector." Taya made a sound that her translator didn't convert, something between a scoff and a laugh. "Very well. I suppose you'll have to do." Lieutenant Kim nodded and gestured toward a waiting vehicle. "If you'll follow me, we've prepared accommodations at our diplomatic center. Your guards are welcome, of course." As they walked, Taya noticed that despite her small size, Lieutenant Kim moved with confident precision. The human maintained perfect positioning, close enough to protect, but not so close as to crowd the princess. "How much do you know about the Narration Empire, Lieutenant?" Taya asked as they approached the vehicle. "I've studied your cultural protocols extensively, Your Highness. I understand that eye contact is considered intimate in your culture, that Nararians value hierarchical respect, and that your people communicate not just with words but with temple markings." Taya raised an eyebrow, her own temple markings flashing briefly with surprise. "Impressive, for a human. Though there is much more to understand than basic etiquette." "I look forward to learning," Lieutenant Kim replied simply. The transport vehicle was comfortable but primitive by Narration standards. As they traveled from the military base into a city, Taya watched the landscape change. Earth had a wild beauty, plants grew wherever they pleased, and buildings showed a surprising variety of designs rather than the unified aesthetic of Narration architecture. "Your world lacks cohesion," Taya observed. Lieutenant Kim glanced out the window. "We call it diversity, Your Highness. Most humans consider it a strength. A strange perspective. Uniformity brings order and efficiency." "Different approaches to the same goals, perhaps," Lieutenant Kim suggested. The diplomatic center turned out to be a large building surrounded by gardens. Security personnel were visible but unobtrusive. Lieutenant Kim escorted Taya to her suite, which had been modified to accommodate Nilarian environmental preferences. The temperature and lighting have been adjusted to match standard Nilarian settings, Lieutenant Kim explained. The water has been treated to match your world's mineral composition. Is there anything else you require? Taya explored the space, noting the efforts humans had made to accommodate her. It was surprisingly thoughtful, if somewhat clumsily executed. This will suffice. When does the diplomatic meeting begin? Tomorrow morning. Today is for you to rest and adjust to Earth's environment. I'll remain outside your door if you need anything. After Lieutenant Kim left, Taya turned to Captain Doyen. What do you make of our human protector? Captain Doyen considered the question. She seems competent for a human, Your Highness. But I don't trust their security systems. We should maintain our own guard rotations. Agreed. Taya moved to the window, looking out at the unfamiliar landscape. There's something about these humans, they seem so fragile, yet they've survived and thrived on this chaotic planet. That evening, a small reception was held to welcome the Nilarian delegation. Taya observed the humans with careful attention. They were emotionally expressive, their faces constantly shifting. They touched each other casually, handshakes, pats on shoulders, gestures that would be intimate violations among her people. Lieutenant Kim remained close, occasionally explaining human customs or introducing officials. Taya noticed that the lieutenant was respected by her peers. They deferred to her judgment regarding the princess's needs. Your people are very physical with each other, Taya commented as they watched a group of humans laughing together. Yes, touch is important in human culture, Lieutenant Kim explained. Though we're being careful to respect Nilarian personal space boundaries. And do all humans laugh so freely? On my world, such displays are reserved for private settings. Lieutenant Kim smiled slightly. Emotional expression varies among humans, but yes, we generally express feelings openly. Is that considered inappropriate in your culture? Control is valued, Taya said. One's inner state should not disrupt social harmony. As the evening progressed, Taya found herself growing fatigued by the constant stimulation of human interaction. Lieutenant Kim noticed immediately. Your Highness, would you like to retire for the evening? Taya nodded, grateful for the human's perception. As they walked back to her suite, Taya found herself curious about this small human who seemed so attuned to her needs. How were you selected for this assignment, Lieutenant? I specialized in xenodiplomatic security and have experience working with non-human species. My superiors felt my background and temperament would be compatible with Nilarian cultural values. And what do you think of us? Taya asked. Of Nilarians? Lieutenant Kim considered her answer carefully. I think your civilization has achieved remarkable things. Your technological and social development is impressive. But I also think our peoples could learn from each other, if we're both willing. Taya's temple markings flickered with interest. Perhaps this diplomatic mission wouldn't be as tedious as she'd feared. This human, at least, seemed worth studying. Tomorrow will be a significant day, Lieutenant. I hope your security measures are as thoughtful as your cultural observations. They are, Your Highness. I promise you'll be safe in my care. Neither of them could have known how soon that promise would be tested. The morning sun cast long shadows across the mountain road as the diplomatic convoy wound its way toward the research facility. 3 armored vehicles traveled in formation, Princess Taya's transport in the middle, flanked by security vehicles. The princess sat in dignified silence, watching the rugged Earth landscape pass by her window. 3 days had passed since her arrival on this strange planet. 3 days of meetings and tours and carefully scripted interactions. Princess Taya had begun to develop a grudging respect for the humans' diplomatic efforts, though she would never admit it aloud. Lieutenant Hannah Kim sat across from her, alert and professional. The human soldier had proven herself capable and observant, anticipating the princess's needs before they were voiced. It was unexpected. The research facility we're visiting specializes in clean energy development, Lieutenant Kim explained. Our scientists are eager to share their progress on fusion technology. Taya's temple markings flickered with subtle amusement. Fusion? My people mastered fusion generators 3 centuries ago. I'm aware, Kim replied without defensiveness. But our approach differs from Nilarian methods. Sometimes a fresh perspective can be valuable. Before Taya could respond, a deafening explosion tore through the air. The lead vehicle disappeared in a fireball. Their own transport swerved violently, the driver fighting for control as the road crumbled beneath them. Ambush, shouted Captain Doyen, drawing his weapon. Lieutenant Kim moved with startling speed. She threw herself across the space between them, shielding the princess with her body as their vehicle skidded and flipped. The world spun in a chaotic blur of motion and sound. Taya felt the human's arms tighten protectively around her as they crashed. When the movement stopped, they were upside down, suspended by safety restraints. The acrid smell of smoke filled the air. Lieutenant Kim released her hold on the princess and quickly cut through Taya's restraints, catching her before she could fall. Are you injured, Your Highness? Kim asked, her voice steady despite a cut on her forehead that leaked red human blood. I am unharmed, Taya replied, her translator struggling with the sudden stress in her voice. My guards. A plasma burst cut through the side of the vehicle, silencing her question. Lieutenant Kim pulled the princess down, shielding her again. Vordak's weapons, Kim whispered, drawing her sidearm. We need to move now. Outside, the sounds of battle grew louder. Captain Doyen shouted something in Nilarian, a warning cut short by another plasma burst. Taya's temple markings pulsed with distress. Lieutenant Kim pried open the damaged door, checked the surroundings, then pulled the princess from the wreckage. Taya had barely gained her footing when she saw them, gray-skinned figures with 4 arms, moving with predatory grace. Vordak's warriors. How did they get to Earth? She gasped. Questions later, Kim replied, firing 3 precise shots that dropped an approaching attacker. Right now, we run. They fled into the dense forest beside the road. Lieutenant Kim moved with surprising confidence through the terrain, guiding the princess over fallen logs and around hazardous footing. Behind them, the sounds of fighting faded, replaced by the methodical movements of pursuers. Why are they targeting me? Taya asked as they paused behind a large boulder. Kim checked her weapon. You're a valuable political target. The princess of the Nilarian Empire would make an excellent hostage. A branch snapped nearby. Lieutenant Kim signaled for silence, then slowly peered around their cover. 3 Vordak soldiers moved through the forest, their multiple arms each holding different weapons. The human's expression hardened as she assessed the threat. Stay here, she whispered. Don't move unless I signal you. Before Taya could protest, Lieutenant Kim slipped away, moving silently between the trees. The princess watched in astonishment as the human circled behind the Vordak's patrol. Kim attacked the rearmost soldier first, a quick, efficient strike that rendered him unconscious before he could alert his companions. The second Vordak sensed something and began to turn, but Lieutenant Kim was already moving. She fired once, dropped to the ground to avoid return fire, then rolled to a new position. Her second shot found its target. The third Vordax leveled all 4 of his weapons in different directions, searching for the threat. Lieutenant Kim threw a small object that exploded with blinding light. While the Vordax was disoriented, she attacked directly, disabling him with precision strikes. Taya had never seen a human move with such lethal efficiency. It contradicted everything she'd been told about their physical limitations. Kim returned to the princess's position, breathing hard but composed. We need to keep moving. There will be more. You fight unusually well for a human, Taya said as they resumed their flight through the forest. A grim smile crossed Kim's face. We're tougher than we look. They traveled for hours, climbing higher into the mountains. Lieutenant Kim maintained a punishing pace, but always remained attentive to the princess's needs. When Taya stumbled on the unfamiliar terrain, Kim was there to steady her. When the princess needed rest, the human found secure locations and stood guard. As daylight began to fade, they reached a small clearing with a cabin nestled against the mountainside. Emergency shelter, Kim explained. Basic supplies, communications equipment, and defensible position. Inside, the cabin was simple but well-equipped. Lieutenant Kim secured the perimeter, checking windows and setting small devices around the clearing. Proximity sensors, she explained when she returned. We'll have warning if they approach. Taya watched as the human finally attended to her own injuries, the cut on her forehead, a bruised shoulder, and a burn on her arm from a near-miss plasma shot. Why did you do that? Taya asked suddenly. Do what? In the vehicle. You placed yourself between me and danger. You could have been killed. Lieutenant Kim looked up from bandaging her arm. That's my job. Your job requires your death? If necessary. The human's simple acceptance of this fact seemed genuine. Protecting you is my mission. Not just because of orders, but because your survival matters to the alliance between our worlds. Taya's temple markings pulsed with confusion. Nilarians understood sacrifice for the greater good in abstract terms, but individual self-sacrifice was rare in their culture. A comfortable silence fell between them as Lieutenant Kim established a secure communications channel. Something's wrong, Kim said after several failed attempts. I can't reach command. The channels are being jammed. The Vordax have advanced signal disruption technology, Taya confirmed. Which means they came prepared specifically for you. Kim's expression darkened. This wasn't random. They knew your route, your schedule. The implication hung in the air between them. Someone had provided the Vordax with classified information. A traitor, Taya whispered, her markings flashing with alarm. But who? Only the highest officials knew our itinerary. Before Lieutenant Kim could respond, one of the proximity sensors triggered. A small light blinked on Kim's wrist device. She immediately doused the cabin's lights and moved to the window, weapon ready. How many? Taya asked, her voice barely audible. At least 5, Kim replied. They're being cautious, moving slowly. She turned to the princess, her expression resolute. I need you to trust me, Your Highness. Can you do that? Taya studied the human's face in the dim moonlight. 3 days ago, she would have dismissed the very idea of trusting a human with her safety. Now, having witnessed Lieutenant Kim's skill and dedication firsthand, she found her answer surprisingly easy. Yes, Lieutenant. I trust you. Kim nodded once, then moved with quiet efficiency to prepare their defense. The night was just beginning, and somewhere in the darkness, their hunters were closing in. The early morning mist clung to the trees as Princess Taya and Lieutenant Kim slipped away from the cabin. They had survived the night through Kim's tactical knowledge and a fair amount of luck. The Vordax patrol had eventually withdrawn after Kim used the cabin's defense systems to make them believe they were facing a larger force. We need to keep moving, Lieutenant Kim said softly, checking her wrist device. The Vordax will return with reinforcements once they realize we've escaped. Taya nodded, her usually perfect appearance now disheveled. Her ceremonial clothing, designed for diplomatic functions rather than wilderness survival, was torn and dirty. Despite this, she maintained her royal composure. Where are we going? She asked. There's a coalition outpost approximately 30 kilometers east, Kim replied. But we'll need to be careful. If there's a traitor, we can't trust standard communication channels. The princess's temple markings pulsed with frustration. I am not accustomed to running and hiding. I understand, Kim said. But right now, staying alive is our priority. She hesitated, then added, Your Highness, you may need to remove your royal insignia. It reflects light and makes you easier to track. Taya looked down at the gleaming crest on her chest, a symbol of her royal lineage worn by Nilarian royalty for centuries. After a moment's hesitation, she unclasped it and tucked it into a hidden pocket. A wise precaution, she conceded. They traveled cautiously through the forest, Lieutenant Kim leading them on a winding path that utilized natural cover. The human moved with quiet confidence, constantly scanning their surroundings. Taya found herself studying Kim's methods, learning from the human's survival skills. By midday, they reached a rushing stream. Kim filled their water containers and checked for signs of pursuit. I'm leaking, she said in confusion, touching the wetness. Kim smiled gently. You're crying, Your Highness. It's a human emotional response. But I'm not human. Nilarians don't cry. Maybe you picked up something from us after all, Kim suggested. Taya wiped away the tears, fascinated by this new experience. It feels strange. Crying can be good, Kim said. It means you care about something deeply. The princess considered this. I care about what happens to you, she admitted. I care about the alliance between our peoples. I care about stopping Miho and his conspirators. Medical staff returned, insisting the lieutenant needed rest. As Taya prepared to leave, Kim caught her hand, a breach of royal protocol that neither mentioned. We did it, Kim said. Together. Taya squeezed the human's hand gently. Yes. Together. 2 weeks passed. Lieutenant Kim recovered with the resilience typical of her species. The princess remained at the coalition outpost, postponing her return to Neeler despite urgent diplomatic communications. She insisted on seeing her protector fully recovered before departing. During this time, events unfolded rapidly across the sector. Advisor Miho and several conspirators were captured. Under questioning, they revealed a complex plot involving isolationist Nilarian factions and Vordax expansionists. The conspiracy extended far beyond what anyone had suspected, reaching high levels in multiple governments. On the day Lieutenant Kim was released from medical care, Princess Taya requested a private meeting with her. They sat in a small garden area within the coalition facility, surrounded by earth plants that Taya had initially found chaotic but now appreciated for their vibrant diversity. I leave for Neeler tomorrow, the princess said. My father has requested my immediate return. Kim nodded. I understand. The situation there must be complicated. Indeed. The revelation of traitors among our highest ranks has shocked our people. Taya's markings pulsed thoughtfully. But perhaps it was necessary. We had become too certain of our superiority, too close to outside perspectives. Every civilization faces those challenges, Kim said diplomatically. Taya studied the human carefully. Lieutenant Kim still moved stiffly from her injuries, but her quiet strength remained undiminished. I have submitted my official report on the events of the past weeks, the princess said. But I find myself struggling to properly convey certain aspects of the experience. Which aspects, Your Highness? The personal ones. Taya hesitated, choosing her words with royal precision. Before coming to Earth, I viewed humans as primitive creatures barely worth diplomatic consideration. I saw you as physically weak, technologically backward, culturally chaotic. Kim listened without reaction, allowing the princess to continue. I was wrong, Taya said simply. What humans lack in physical attributes, you compensate for with remarkable adaptability. Your technology follows different paths than ours, but achieves similar results through creative approaches. And your cultural diversity, which I once saw as inefficient, is perhaps your greatest strength. Thank you, Your Highness. That's very insightful. It is merely truth, Taya replied. And there is more. In my culture, individuals serve the hierarchy. Personal sacrifice for another is rare and generally discouraged as inefficient. Yet you repeatedly risked everything to protect me, not just as a diplomatic representative, but as a person you had come to care about. The princess's markings pulsed with emotion. This concept of individual connection overriding systemic calculations, it is something I am still processing. Kim smiled. We call it friendship, Your Highness. Sometimes humanity. Yes. Humanity. Taya nodded slowly. I believe I have finally begun to understand what that word truly means. She reached into a pocket of her newly restored royal garments and withdrew her insignia, the symbol of Nilarian royalty she had removed days ago on Kim's advice. I have a request, she said formally. I wish for you to become the official human liaison to the Nilarian royal court. Lieutenant Kim's eyes widened in surprise. Me? Surely there are diplomats better suited. I do not want a diplomat, Taya interrupted. I want someone who understands both our worlds. Someone I trust. She held out the insignia. This has been modified to include Earth's symbol alongside the Nilarian royal crest. A visual representation of our partnership. Kim accepted the token carefully. I'm honored, Your Highness. But the decision isn't entirely mine. I have responsibilities here, commanding officers. Already addressed, Taya said with royal confidence. Your superiors recognize the diplomatic value of this appointment. A week later, Princess Taya stood before the Galactic Coalition Council. Representatives from dozens of species filled the chamber, including her father, Emperor Taewon of the Nilarian Empire. Lieutenant Kim stood at a respectful distance behind the princess, now dressed in a formal uniform that incorporated elements of both Earth and Nilarian design. The events on Earth have revealed dangerous fractures in our interstellar community, Taya began. Isolationism and supremacy threaten not just the human alliance, but galactic stability itself. Her temple markings pulsed with conviction as she continued. I came to Earth believing humans were primitive and unworthy. What I discovered instead was a species with extraordinary qualities we would be wise to emulate. Their physical limitations have fostered innovation. Their brief lifespans have instilled urgency and purpose. Their diversity has created resilience. The princess looked back briefly at Lieutenant Kim before concluding. The Nilarian Empire formally recommends strengthening our alliance with Earth, not merely for strategic advantage, but because humans have something valuable to teach us all, something I had to experience personally to understand. A council member asked, And what is that, Your Highness? Princess Taya's temple markings pulsed with an emotion no translator could fully capture. That true strength lies not in perfection or uniformity, but in connection. In caring for others beyond calculation. In something humans simply call humanity. As the council chambers filled with murmurs and discussions, Taya turned to Lieutenant Kim. For the first time since they had met, the princess smiled openly, a gesture she had learned from her human friend. Did I pronounce it correctly? She asked quietly. Humanity? Kim nodded, her own eyes suspiciously moist. Perfectly, Your Highness. Taya, the princess corrected gently. When we are not in formal settings, I would like you to call me Taya. Only if you'll call me Hannah. The princess considered this breach of protocol, then nodded. Agreed. Hannah. And so began a new chapter in galactic diplomacy, founded not on strategic necessity alone, but on understanding and friendship between two very different worlds.